Conflict in teams. Throughout history, conflict has also always plagued humanity, whether it's in a large society or isolated in a small group. When looking at group conflict, there are several ways to both define and resolve group conflicts. Let's look at some ways to define conflict. Types of conflict. There are three main types. Relationship conflict is when problems arise regarding people in the team. Task conflict is when problems arise regarding the work being done, not directly related to people, but related to ideas. Disagreements on the merits of ideas, plans, and projects are also part of task conflict. In process conflict, there are disagreements on how to approach a task. Who should do what? Team conflict, good or bad. It all depends on which type of conflict. Relationship conflict is when it's personal, defensive, and resentful, and it's also rooted in anger, personal friction, personality clashes, ego, and tension. It causes people to become preoccupied with non-task issues and also may produce anxiety that distracts team members. In task conflict, it all depends on how much conflict and how difficult the task is. Task conflict can increase creativity and force group members to think outside the box, but it can also lead to an information overload. More difficult tasks are also harmed by task conflict. Process conflict. It must be kept low. There's a small amount of process conflict. The team generates creative ideas on how to accomplish tasks and works together. Conflict composition. Conflict can be organized in two ways, proportional and perceptual. Proportional conflict is what types of conflict, relationship, task, or process are present and to what degree. Low task conflict and no other conflict will cause a different experience than identical levels of task conflict if relationship conflict is present, for example. Conflicts also can cancel each other out. Perceptual conflict is a slightly different way to organize it. Team members may disagree on levels of conflict and whether conflicts exist at all. This conflict in itself may negatively influence team effectiveness. Conflict can center on two different kinds of topics, real or symbolic. Real conflict focuses on tangible, usually economic issues. These include salary, size of staff, and size of offices. Symbolic conflict focuses on differing beliefs such as quality versus quantity, merit-based versus equal opportunity. An example cause of real conflict is egocentric bias. We tend to overestimate our own contributions and value them more. We reward people in ways that we would want to be rewarded. Conflict management. The most effective teams have several common skills that they share when it comes to dealing with conflict. First of all, they realize that conflict is an inevitable part of working in a team. Second, they deal with conflict proactively. That is, they develop procedures and practices to deal with conflict before it starts. Third, they focus on behaviors, which are changeable, and not traits, which are steady over time. Groups that improve and maintain top performance have three best practices for conflict resolution. They focus on the content of interactions rather than delivery style. When it comes to working as a team, what's important is what's being said, not how it's said. They also explicitly discuss the reasoning behind work allocation, so nobody feels overworked or left out. And speaking of work allocation, they assign work based on a person's ability and expertise. It's great if a person volunteers for an assignment or it's convenient to assign it to them, but that doesn't mean that they are the best choice for the job. Approaches to conflict management. According to Blake and Newton, there are 5 different main courses of action people can take when they're involved in a conflict, and they vary based on your level of concern for others and your concern for yourself. At the bottom of both scales, where neither party receives anything, is avoidance. Both parties avoid the issue entirely, and neither makes any progress in any direction. High concern for oneself will lead one to competition, where you intimidate others to achieve a result that favors you. High concern for others may lead you to accommodation when you give up something in order to help others achieve their goals. Equal concern for others and oneself can lead to 2 ways. Compromise, where neither party gets quite what they want, where both are satisfied, or collaboration, when both parties receive everything they want out of an agreement. Another model of team performance is how teams manage conflict. The collaboration versus contending model claims that, in a conflict, teams either collaborate, much like the Blake and Newton model's collaboration outcome, or they contend, relying on different styles of argument. A team that collaborates has an interest-based approach. That is, they are focused on satisfying both parties' interests. A team that contends may go one of two ways. They may go for a rights-based argument rooted in some kind of fairness, precedent, contract, or law, or they may go for a power-based approach rooted in the use of force, intimidation, rank, and power. Conflict interventions. Wakeman and Donefeld have 4 different kinds of interventions that team leaders and managers can implement to improve the conflict resolution process. The first is team redesign. This is deliberate changes in the environment and tasks that teams interact in. Team design usually involves very specific structural changes to a group, which may include how their goals are defined, the resources allocated to the team rewards, and conduct norms. The second intervention is task process coaching. This is aimed exclusively at improving motivation, strategy, and talent. However, task process coaching is not intended specifically to prevent conflict. Conflict process coaching directly addresses conflict in an effort to improve the quality and productivity of team conflict. This may include trust building and structured debate. The final intervention, changing the individual, is an individual-level training aimed at making a specific team member more tolerant of others' ideas and more thoughtful and capable of productively disagreeing with others. This may include, for example, behavioral training and negotiation. Fairness in teams. Many conflicts arise in teams because members don't know where they stand. People complain that they're not listened to or they are ignored. There are different norms of fairness or methods of justice or distribution. They can be referred to several different ways, but they have the same purpose: providing team members with a frame of reference for dividing power, resources, costs, and benefits. The equity method suggests that team costs and benefits should be proportional to team members' contributions. The equality method, or blind justice, suggests that all team members should suffer or benefit equally, regardless of their input. And finally, there's a need method, or a welfare-based justice, proposes that benefits and costs should be proportional to members' needs. Minority and majority influence are ways that majorities and minorities influence their teams. One method they do this through is direct influence, which is when the minority or majority influences the other to adopt their position, generally in a direct way, such as enticing. Another method is indirect influence, when people in the majority privately agree with the minority. Another influence effect is compliance, which occurs when people change their attitudes and behavior as a result of direct influence or pressure. Lastly, conversion, which is when people change their attitudes and behavior as a result of thinking about a subject on one's own. Minorities tend to induce conversion, while majorities induce compliance. That's been our PowerPoint on conflict, and if you can successfully implement these strategies and interventions, you can change your ineffective team conflict into productive, useful team conflict.